The strange thing is, most people believe money is real, not just useful, not just symbolic, but solid, grounded, reliable. They believe the numbers in their bank account represent something concrete, something earned, something stored, something that exists. But what if that belief is wrong? What if the money you use every day stopped meaning what you think it means over 50 years ago? What if the world quietly crossed a line in 1971 and nothing was ever the same again? Because once you understand what happened that year, you begin to see inflation differently, debt differently, work differently, even time differently, and the most disturbing part, almost nobody talks about it. In the early 20th century, money was still connected to something physical: gold, silver, reserves, limits. You couldn't create it endlessly, you had to earn it, mine it, or back it with something real. For decades, the world ran on this understanding. Nations argued, traded, and sometimes fought over tangible value. Gold shipments moved across oceans. Vaults mattered. Borders mattered. Then came the wars. World War I shattered economies. Governments borrowed heavily. Gold reserves drained. But the system survived. Barely. World War II changed everything. The United States emerged as the dominant economic power. Its factories were untouched. Its gold reserves were massive. Its currency was trusted. So in 1944, representatives from 44 countries met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to design a new global financial system. The deal was simple. The US dollar would be backed by gold. Other currencies would be backed by the dollar. Gold would stay at the center, but only one country would control the anchor. At first, this worked. The dollar became the backbone of global trade. Countries held dollars. Oil was priced in dollars. Reserves were measured in dollars. But there was a hidden flaw. To supply the world with dollars, the US had to keep spending. To keep spending, it had to keep issuing dollars. To keep issuing dollars, it slowly drained its gold. By the late 1960s, foreign governments began to notice. France openly questioned the system. Other nations followed. They began converting dollars back into gold. The math no longer worked. And then came 1971. On a quiet Sunday evening, President Richard Nixon went on television. No vote, no international meeting, no public debate. He announced that the United States would temporarily suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. That temporary decision became permanent. In one moment, money changed forever. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. It was backed by confidence. And because the world depended on the dollar, every currency on earth became backed by nothing but belief. This wasn't just a policy change. It was a philosophical shift. Money stopped being a store of value. It became a tool of policy. From that moment on, money could be created without physical limits. Governments no longer needed gold. Banks no longer needed reserves in the old sense. They needed trust. At first, people didn't notice. Life continued. Paychecks arrived. Prices moved slowly. Growth looked real. But under the surface, the system had changed its nature. Debt replaced savings. Credit replaced wages. Future promises replaced present value. Banks discovered they could create money by lending it into existence. Governments discovered they could borrow without immediate consequences. And inflation became a feature, not a bug. In the 1970s, prices surged. Oil shocks hit. Wages struggled to keep up. The public felt something was wrong, but few understood why. The system didn't correct itself. By the 1980s and 1990s, debt became normalized. Households borrowed. Corporations leveraged. Governments ran deficits as a routine practice. The meaning of money quietly shifted. It was no longer something you earned and saved. It was something you accessed and managed. Your financial success depended less on work and more on timing, leverage, and exposure. Assets inflated. Wages stagnated. Those closest to the money creation process benefited first. Banks, financial institutions, asset holders. Those farthest from it paid the price later. Workers, savers, fixed income households. This pattern repeated across countries: Japan, Europe, Latin America, emerging markets, different cultures, same system. Every time growth slowed, the response was the same: low rates, more liquidity, more debt. When that stopped working, central banks tried something new: quantitative easing, money creation at a scale never seen. Therefore, after the 2008 financial crisis, trillions were injected into the system. Markets recovered, asset prices soared, but the real economy lagged behind. The system was no longer fixing problems. It was masking them. And then came 2020. The pandemic accelerated everything. Governments printed money at historic levels. Debt exploded. Central banks crossed lines once thought impossible. For a moment, it felt painless. Then inflation arrived, not as a shock, but as a consequence. Prices rose globally, housing became unreachable. Food costs climbed, energy costs surged. People worked harder, but felt poorer, and confusion spread. Why does money feel weaker? Why does everything cost more? Why does saving feel pointless? The answer traces back to 1971. When money lost its anchor, it lost its discipline. When discipline disappeared, growth became artificial. When growth became artificial, inequality widened. This doesn't mean the system is evil. It means the system has limits, and those limits are psychological. A monetary system based on belief can survive anything except the loss of trust. History shows this pattern clearly. Every system that detached money from value eventually faced a reckoning, not overnight, not dramatically, slowly, quietly, gradually, until people noticed that effort no longer matched reward, that contracts no longer protected value, that the future felt smaller than the past. Today, we live inside the transition. Some call it a crisis, some call it a reset, some deny it entirely, but the numbers tell the story. Debt is higher than ever. Interest costs are rising. Currencies compete in a race to devalue slowly. No one wants to be first to stop the machine, because stopping it would mean admitting the truth. That money no longer measures reality. It manages perception. And once you see that, you understand the real lesson of 1971. Money didn't disappear. Its meaning did. The question now isn't whether the system will change. It's how, gradually, painfully, or unexpectedly, because systems built on belief always last longer than expected, and then faster than imagined. If you want to understand how money actually works, not how it's advertised, if you want history instead of headlines, and clarity instead of fear, stay with this channel, because the story of money isn't finished. We're living inside the next chapter.